Hello everyone, and welcome to the N400 Station Volunteer Training webinar. My name is Anthony, and I'm the Regional Trainer with the Florida Immigrant Coalition. Today, we will cover the basic steps necessary to successfully assist citizenship applicants in the N400 stations at our clinics. As a volunteer in the N400 station, you are the core of the work that we do at clinics. The majority of the applicant's time is spent filling out the N400 application with you. Depending on the circumstances and details around applicants' information, and including other factors such as having an interpreter for those who do not speak English, filling out N400 applications with them can take anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour and a half. This means that you are the person applicants will be spending the most of their time with, which makes your role a very important one. So we want to make sure you have everything you need in terms of skill and knowledge of the N400 application process. At the N400 station, you will be sitting down across from or beside the applicant with a laptop and a USB drive connected to the laptop, with N400 PDF files saved and opened onto your desktop. When you're ready to receive an applicant, signal to our N400 station captain, and they will usher a new applicant over to you. Be sure to greet them, introduce yourself, explaining how you will be serving them, and congratulate them for coming. We have noticed a huge surge in applicants coming in to get naturalized who have been living as legal permanent residents for over 15, 20, and even 30 years or more. So this is a very exciting, long-awaited day for them. The first thing you want to ask them for is to hand you their intake folder and their legal permanent residency card or green card. It looks like this. Also, ask them if they brought their passport and social security card with them as well, as you will need it for a later part in the N400 application process, when it asks to document the social security number and travel in the last 5 years. The next thing you do is open up their intake folder and make sure their intake form on the right-hand side has been filled out, and it looks like this. Also, you want to make sure the pre-screening sheet on the left-hand side has been filled out, indicating that they've been registered into the clinic and pre-screened and approved by a lawyer or a BIA accredited representative before seeing you. On the second page of the right-hand side of the folder, behind the intake form, you'll find what we call the stop sign sheet. This is a sheet with a stop sign and a questionnaire on it. If there are any questions that the applicant has answered yes to, stop and call on the N400 captain to review and make sure you can proceed. You can call their attention using the question mark sign, which will be on your station desk. We want to make sure there are no potential red flags, which can jeopardize an applicant's process in applying. Once we have covered all these preliminary steps, we are ready to proceed to filling out the application. The first thing you'll do is write down their 9-digit A number from their green card into the application. It can be listed on the green card as A number or as USCIS number. It's the only 9-digit number listed on the card. So the 9-digit A number for this applicant, for example, is 347298884. Once you fill it out, on the top right-hand corner of the first page, it should automatically upload onto every other page thereafter. As we see here, it's on every page now. Make sure you double check that you wrote down their A number correctly. 347298884. Check. Now, under Part 1, you want to make sure that only one eligibility box should be checked. So in this case, our applicant has been a lawful permanent resident of the United States for at least 5 years. In order to determine this, all you have to do is look on their green card under where it says resident since, and it will indicate the date that they became a legal permanent resident, making sure it goes back at least 5 years. On Part 2, you want to make sure the applicant's name is spelled correctly. If the applicant would like to get their name changed, stop and call on the coordinator. This is very unlikely though. Most applicants choose to keep their name, but you want to ask them and make sure. And then you want to make sure their social security card number is correct. At this point, you would ask them to hand you their social security card, which is under 5, right here. So we'll start filling out her name. Our applicant's name today is Elena Chavez. So we'll put Chavez Elena. And Elena has no middle name. Then you want to make sure your name, Elena Chavez, appears exactly as it's on their green card, typed down under number 2. Chavez Elena. Even if their legal name is different than the name on their green card, make sure you write it exactly as it appears on their green card under number 2. Other names used since birth includes nicknames, aliases, and maiden name. You would fill that out as well. And then here's the option for legally changing your name. In this case, Elena wants to keep her name. She likes her name. Social security card number. Elena is a female, and she was born on November 2nd, 1971. And the date that she became a lawful permanent resident, as indicated on her green card, is November 5th, 2010. Her country of birth is Peru. And her country of citizenship or nationality is Peru. You would want to ask her at this point if she has a physical or developmental disability or mental impairment that prevents her from demonstrating knowledge and understanding of the English language. If she does, she would need to submit a Form 648, N648, medical certification for disability exemptions when you file the N400 application. In this case, Elena says no. Now here's a very important next step. It is crucial that the applicant understands if they do not qualify for the exemption from taking the English language test, which consists of an English citizenship test and an English interview, that they are not allowed to take the test in their native language. This may be very disheartening to hear, but they must understand if they do not speak English and are unwilling or unable to learn English in time before their citizenship test and interview, they will fail. If they choose to proceed, let your station captain know so they can provide the applicant with resources on where to take English citizenship classes. Please do not forget this part. You do not want to fill out their application and have them spend 2 to 3 hours at a clinic only to let them know later on that they will not pass. So in this case, Elena has been a legal permanent resident since the year 2010, which means she's only been living here for 7 years, in which case she wouldn't qualify for any of the exemptions. The exemptions are listed as follows. Are you 50 years of age or older, and have you lived in the United States as a lawful permanent resident for periods totaling 20 years at the time you file your N400? In this case, no. Are you 55 years of age or older and lived in the United States as a lawful permanent resident for periods totaling 15 years at the time you file your N400? The answer is no. And are you 65 years of age, living in the United States as a lawful permanent resident for at least 20 years? The answer is no. At this point, I would let Elena know if she has any problem taking the test in English. If she says she was expecting it to take it in English and she's prepared to take it and she does not need an interpreter, then great, proceed. If she says that she does not know English, she does not speak it well, she is not prepared to take the citizenship test in English, and she's unwilling to take the citizenship test in English, then at that point, let her know that we should cease from continuing the application process until she is eligible for the exemption once she has been a legal permanent resident for at least 15 years. And if she also states that she's been a legal permanent resident for 7 years, understanding that she doesn't speak English, but she's willing to study and to learn and to be prepared for it, then you can proceed with the application and make sure the captain provides her with the resources that she needs. Moving forward to part 3, this would be accommodations for individuals with disabilities and or impairments. In this case, Elena has none, so we'll put no. A daytime telephone number is all that is necessary to fill out under information to contact you, so we'll just fill out that one. You can also ask Elena if she would like to submit an email. If she doesn't have one, or if she's not willing to, you can leave it blank, that's fine. Now, the very next thing you will do is start filling out part 5, information about your residence. You want to ensure that applicant's mailing address is correct and ask the applicant if they will be moving. If the client is moving, stop and call on a coordinator. And you also want to check for gaps in the residence. There should not be any gaps. So this is all of the places that they've lived within the last 5 years. In this case, Elena has lived in the same house since the year 2011, which is 6 years. Therefore, this would be the only location she would have to put under current physical address. So we'll fill that out here. Elena lives on 222 Third Road. It's a house. Miami-Dade, Florida, 33174. And she's been living there since March of 2011. She doesn't remember the exact date, so at this point, it's okay to put just the month and the year. You would fill it out like this: :03 2011. Mailing address is the same as current address, so we leave it blank. And since she's lived there for 6 years, we would move on to the next part. Also, on their intake folder, on the right-hand side, behind the stop sheet sign that we discussed earlier, there is some documents that they were supposed to fill out, which indicates all the places they've lived in the last 5 years, all the places they've worked in the last 5 years, and how many children they've had. Basically, everything that you need in order to fill out this application completely should already be listed on the documents that they filled out in the intake folder, in the blue intake folder. So make sure to go through that as well and double check with them to make sure everything is accurate. Under part 6, information about your parents. This only applies if one of their parents is a US citizen. If they're not, then you would just skip it and go to part 7. So even if it is true that their parents were married before their 18th birthday, if they're not US citizens, you don't need to put yes or no, just leave it blank. So in this case, Elena's parents are both Peruvian, and they're both from Peru, and they're not US citizens. And they were married before her 18th birthday, but it doesn't apply because they're not citizens. So we just leave it blank. And we move on to part 7, biographic information. Elena identifies her ethnicity as Hispanic or Latino. Her race is white. And also, Asian, white and Asian. You would want to ask her for her height and her weight. Her height can be found on her driver's license if she doesn't know it. In this case, Elena is 5 feet, 5 inches. And she weighs 142 pounds. Her eye color is brown, and her hair color is black. Next is part 8, information about your employment and schools you attended. You want to ensure that all gaps in employment are accounted for. If the applicant does not remember exact dates for employment, month and year is sufficient. Make sure that the periods of unemployment are also included in order. So if for some reason your applicant were unemployed, you would simply put unemployed. And you would put from such date to such date. If they're currently unemployed, you would put from the date that they became employed, and you would put present. In this case, Elena is employed. She works at State Farm. The address is 111 Coral Way, Miami, Florida, 175. And Elena has been working at State Farm since February of 2012, which is over 5 years from today's date. So we would put approx February 2012 to present. And her occupation is representative. And we would move on to the next section. Part 9, time outside of the United States. You want to ensure that the international trips are listed from most recent and go back all the way to 5 years from the date they will be applying. So if they're applying in April of 2017, this month, they need record trips dating back from April of 2012 till present. If the applicant has a passport, ask them to hand it to you and check for entry stamps. If not, then ask the applicant to estimate the dates to the best of their ability. So, a couple of ways to determine where they've traveled to in the last 5 years is asking them for their passport and looking on their intake form folder where they have filled out the time outside of the United States document. So in this case, Elena has taken 3 trips in the last 5 years. She traveled to Peru for 21 days from July 1st, 2016 through July 22nd, 2016. Or July 21st, 21 days. Did the trip last 6 months or more? No. Her next trip on her passport showed that she traveled to Peru on April 22nd, 2014. And she returned on April 28th, 2014. No. She traveled to Peru as well. And the last trip she took, she went on a cruise from March 2nd, 2013 through March 6th, 2013. A little 4-day cruise there. Now, even if she didn't land on any country and step out, say she didn't go to the Bahamas, she didn't step out of the cruise ship and go to Mexico, she was just on board, she still left the United States. So the correct answer she would put there was on board. Or if she did travel to specific countries, she would put Jamaica, Mexico, etc. Right? So we'll just put on board. So the total days is 27, 28, 29, 30, 31 days. If any trip that your applicant took lasted 6 months or more, please stop and call on a coordinator. It's very crucial. Moving on to part 10, information about marital history. In this case, Elena is single and has never been married. So we'll put single, never married. If she's single and never married, you would go to part 11. If she was married, then you would fill out the current spouse's legal name, their information, date of birth, the date that they entered into the marriage, and the current spouse's present home address, and other questions if they're a U.S. citizen, etc. It'll also ask if your current spouse has been married before and ask for your current spouse's previous spouse's information as well. It's not as detailed, but it's asking for it and it needs to be looked up. So in this case, Elena is single. And we would move on to part 11, information about your children. Now in this case, Elena actually does have a child and his name is Esteban. So we're gonna fill out his information here. It's important that your applicant understands that all children includes children who are alive, missing, or deceased, children born in the United States or outside of the United States, children under 18 years of age or over 18 years of age, children who are married or unmarried, children who are living with you or not living with you. This also includes current stepchildren, legally adopted children, and children born when you were not married. Basically, any child that you have participated in the creation of needs to be put down in here, okay? So here we have Esteban. We put his information here. Esteban doesn't have a middle name. He's an American, so he doesn't have an A number, and his date of birth was 03/12/2011. Country of birth, USA. Esteban lives with his mother, so it would be the same address that she has. Miami-Dade, Florida, 474. Biological child. And she doesn't have any more children. Here begins the final and most important part of the application, which is the series of questions on additional information about you, part 12. Some of the questions on the stop sign sheet that were on the intake folder should reflect the questions that are being asked on this part of the application. So at this point, you would want to ask her each question one by one out loud and her answering yes or no. Make sure to let them know to not respond yes or no until after you have fully asked the question. If they do not understand your question because of any language barriers, call on an interpreter for you, okay? In this case, Elena does not need an interpreter and she could understand your questions clearly. So she would begin answering, have you ever claimed to be a U.S. citizen? Yes or no? She would put no. Have you ever registered to vote in a federal, state, or local election in the United States? No. Simply following through with asking her question and listening to her answer. If in any of these questions she puts yes, for example, do you owe any federal, state, or local taxes? Any questions that she puts yes, stop and call on a coordinator to make sure that you can proceed with her application. and that this is not a potential red flag that can jeopardize her application. So in this case, Elena is flawless, and she's got no issues. She's never even received a ticket. There's a question here that's very important. We're going to go back to over here. Oh, it's further down. Let's keep going. No, she's never been a member of the Communist Party. She's never been in any totalitarian party. She's never been in the terrorist organization. Some of these questions can be very, very, very detailed and very intrusive. Some of them may also be very outdated, as you can see here. Between March 23rd and May 8th, 1933 and 1945, did she ever work in any way with the Nazi government of Germany, right? So just go through these questions. You may get a kick or a laugh out of a couple of them with your applicant. But make sure you're asking the question respectfully and always laughing with them, never at them, right? So no, never done any of these things, never been a member of a self-defense unit, a rebel group. Once again, you're asking them each question one by one. Military unit, paramilitary unit, police unit, self-defense unit, vigilante unit, rebel group. You always want to make sure you ask specifically each question, okay? They're there for a reason. Okay, keep going, no. For the questions that had follow-up questions, make sure I didn't do that already by mistake. There are some questions that have follow-up questions that if you put no on, you don't have to answer anymore. So for example, here I made a mistake. Have you ever filed a federal, state, or local tax return since you became a lawful permanent resident? No. And then you would just leave this blank because this is if you answered yes, right? So make sure you go back and check that you didn't do that as well, just like I did. See, everyone makes mistakes. So here, were you ever part of any group, ever help in any group or organization that used a weapon against any person threatening to do so? No, and then you would leave A and B blank and move on. No, A and B blank, move on. So we're just gonna go ahead and go through all these. So now here, this question is very important. Question number 23. Have you ever been arrested, cited, or detained by any law enforcement officer? It's asking for 3 different questions: arrested, cited, or detained. Cited is if you got pulled over by a police officer and you got a ticket for passing a red light. Very different from being arrested, but they're included here. So she needs to make sure that even if she wasn't arrested, she still needs to put yes if she did get a citation. So if Elena did get a ticket for passing a red light, for example, she would need to indicate that she did. We would put yes, and you would go down here, and then here have the explanation. Why were you arrested, cited, or detained? You would just put running a red light. The date, she would have to provide you with the date, the city, and the outcome. Paid ticket, paid citation, right? And she would need documentation of that. That's all. Nothing serious, but it's important to document all of it because they're going to run your records, the records of the applicant, right? So in this case, Elena's driving record is flawless. So we'll keep going through here. Never been in prison. Have you ever been a habitual drunkard? Have you ever been a prostitute or procured anyone for prostitution? See, some of these questions may be very, almost humiliating, right? And so you want to ask them clearly and make sure that they're comfortable, right? No. We're going to keep answering these questions until we get to the important part here. Get B and C. Okay. Now, the last series of questions. Oh, here. Are you a male who lives in the United States? She's a female, so we would put no. If they're male, between their 18th and 26th birthday, they need to have registered for the selective service, and there's a process for finding that out. So if you need any help with that, call and ask on a coordinator, on an N400 captain. These last 5 questions here. You must answer yes to all of these questions, with the exception of question number 48. If the law requires it, are you willing to bear arms on behalf of the United States? The only exemption from this question comes to folks who, for religious reasons, they are not allowed to bear arms on behalf of the United States. So some Jehovah's Witnesses would qualify for this. Making sure that you get a letter from your religious institution, your church or your congregation that justifies that your inability to bear arms on behalf of the United States. Otherwise, you would have to put yes. You would ask them out loud, just like you asked them all the other questions out loud. Do you support the Constitution and form of government of the United States? Yes. Do you understand the full oath of allegiance to the United States? Yes. Are you willing to take the full oath of allegiance to the United States? Yes. If the law requires it, are you willing to bear arms on behalf of the United States? Yes. If the law requires it, are you willing to perform non-combatant services in the U.S. Armed Forces? Yes. And if the law requires it, are you willing to perform work of national importance under civilian direction? Yes. Once you're done with part 12, you're practically finished with the application. You would just need to wrap up with some additional information. For example, it's going to ask for the preparer's information and for the interpreter's information. This would just be your name and last name. So we'll go through that together, right? The applicant can read and understand English, and therefore she didn't require an interpreter, so we would leave that blank. If she did, we would fill it out. At my request, the preparer named in part 15, this would be me, for example. I'm the preparer, so I would fill out my name, Anthony Paz. Prepared this application for me based only upon information I provided or authorized. We move forward, applicant certification, applicant signature. This is where the applicant will sign, and they'll do that after we print out the application. I'll explain that process in a minute. Interpreter's full name, if they needed one. In this case, we didn't. And then interpreter's contact information, don't need it. Don't need it. Part 15, this is your part. This is where you need to fill in, as the preparer, your last and first name. And everything else will already be pre-filled. When you come into the clinic and you sit down and you have these N400 PDF documents opened up to work on, the preparer's business organization and mailing address and contact information will already be filled out with Flick information. So it'll say Flick. It will show Flick's address. You won't have to fill it out like I'm filling it out here. It will already be filled out. Okay. If you are an attorney or a BIA accredited representative, you would check this one. In this case, in most cases, our volunteers who are doing N400s are not attorneys or accredited representatives. I myself am not, so I would put here that I am not an attorney, but I have prepared this application on behalf of the applicant with their consent. And then my signature would go here after we print out the application. Signature at interview, part 16. Everything else after part 15, so that means part 16, 17, and 18, will not be completed until the US CIS officer instructs you to do at the interview. So this is where we stop. Once you have completed the N400 application and reviewed it once more to make sure there were no mistakes, you may raise the thumbs up sign on your station desk and save it into your USB drive under the name of the applicant, right? So here we would click Save. You would save it into the USB drive, removable disk E. And you would save it as last name, first name. So I would put Chavez underscore Elena, N400. Save it, and safely eject the USB from the computer. So you would click on the icon, eject flash drive. Oh, we have to close it up first, then eject flash drive. Boom, ready to go. Next, you will escort the applicant to the printing station and print a copy of their application and a copy of their green card. Make sure they have a copy of both the front and the back of their green card, along with their N400 application. Make sure you sign on their application under Preparer in Part 15, as indicated earlier, and make sure the printing station captain has returned your USB drive back to you after he has finished making the copies. Before sending them off to the fee waiver station or a final review by a lawyer, or depending on the capacity of the clinic, to the exit station, if you are not sure where they should go next, ask the N400 station captain and they'll direct them to the right place. Someone is always there to help. Thank them for coming and return to your station. Plug your USB drive back onto your laptop and begin another N400 application. At this point, you may take another applicant when you're ready, or take a break if necessary. So this is a general overview of the N400 station methods and procedures. If you have any other questions or concerns around this role at Citizenship Clinics, please feel free to contact our office at 305-571-7254. We're so grateful to have you come and spend your time helping future citizens and empowering our communities become part of the political process and the American dream. Once again, my name is Anthony and I'm the regional trainer with the Florida Immigrant Coalition. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you soon.